Good, happy Friday morning, September 25th, 2020. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Friday morning, so let's begin. First up, we begin with COVID-19 updates. 37 new COVID-19 cases confirmed, 4 new hospitalizations. Health officials announced no new deaths for the 9th straight day. And take a look at coronavirus in New Hampshire case updates. And as you can see right here, 37 new cases, 8,044 total cases, no new deaths, 438 total deaths, and 4 new hospitalizations. And now let's take a look at your COVID-19 in New Hampshire important information and latest data. Let's take a look at that right now. And here is a look at that for all of you right now. There are 8,044 number of people in New Hampshire have tested positive for COVID-19. 6,971,871 number of people in the United States have tested positive. 732 number of deaths on COVID-19 in New Hampshire. 202,692 number of deaths from COVID-19 in the United States. And let's take a look at this map of New Hampshire where current cases of COVID-19 are. Manchester 39. Let's take a look at this map of New Hampshire where total cases of COVID-19 are. Manchester 2038. And now let's take a look at these 3 charts here. Let's start with the first chart here. New cases each day in New Hampshire in the purple, daily new positive COVID-19 cases, in orange new hospitalizations, and in the red are the deaths. Let's take a look at this chart here. Current cases in the purple, total current COVID-19 cases, and in the orange, current hospitalizations. And let's take a look at this chart here. Total cases in the purple, total positive COVID-19 cases, in orange, total hospitalizations, red, deaths, and blue recovered. Let's take a look at this chart here. Age group of cases, female and male of cases, and risk information. Let's take a look at this chart here. Infections, hospitalizations, and deaths. And let's take a look at this chart here. Deaths, percent of New Hampshire population, race/ethnicity of cases, and hospitalizations. And a reminder, your common symptoms: fever, lack of smell, cough, difficult breathing, chills, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. How it spreads, and prevention tips. And be sure to stay with the Riley King Network for the latest of your COVID-19 information. Trick or treating can happen in New Hampshire, but state officials release COVID-19 safety tips. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
Fairs may be canceled, but Mainly Tub's huge annual fair sale is back and bigger than ever. With hundreds of hot tubs in stock and on their way, we can guarantee the largest select.
New Hampshire restaurants that managed to navigate through reopening and made the most of outdoor dining are getting a chance to move back indoors. New state guidance will allow establishments to go to 100% indoor capacity, and they can ease 6-foot distancing requirements as long as protective barriers are put in place between tables.
Effective on October 1st, we'll be easing the 6-foot distancing rule for tables and booths at restaurants as long as they enact protective barriers. And this change again was approved by the team over at Public Health.
The governor says he wanted to avoid clusters of COVID illness in restaurants, similar to what was seen in Texas and Florida this summer when they fully reopened without restrictions.
We do continue to see positive data in restaurants. They are currently not a source of widespread transmission. We've seen this model be enacted in other places across the New England region and across the country very successfully.
Halloween may be a few weeks away, but the state is already putting out guidance for communities that want to move forward with trick-or-treating. The governor says everyone should wear masks that cover the nose and mouth, keep a 6-foot distance, and do lots of hand sanitizing. And he says consent is key.
Trick-or-treating is something that is 100% optional for both kids and adults. And if folks don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable, then they definitely should not partake in either trick-or-treating or providing candy.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Six-foot rule eased in New Hampshire restaurants if barriers placed between tables. Governor says new rule should allow restaurants to serve more customers. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
Fairs may be canceled, but Mainly Tub's huge annual fair sale is back and bigger than ever, with hundreds of hot tubs in stock and on their way.
New Hampshire restaurants are hungry to get back to business. Now the state says it's time to take another step. Right now, restaurants can welcome diners inside if tables are at least 6 feet apart. Starting October 1st, the state will relax those distancing standards if protective barriers are in place.
We do continue to see positive data in restaurants. They are currently not a source of widespread transmission. We've seen this model be enacted in other places across the New England region and across the country very successfully.
The idea is to bring more business to the table safely, especially when cool weather puts a damper on outdoor dining.
We've had no reported incidents. So, I mean, if you're careful, I think you can do it.
Steve Newick, third-generation owner of Newick's Lobster House in Concord and Dover, says everyone was laid off for 2.5 months during the shutdown. The family business helped them through by paying for everyone's health insurance. Now a lot are back on the job. He's hoping fitting more customers in restaurants will help more families.
The whole industry is in trouble right now, so any little bit to help people, I mean, we need to do, because we're talking about a lot of people's jobs here.
And tomorrow, Newick's will host the governor and other restaurants to talk about business concerns and reveal what those protective barriers will look like. Live in the newsroom tonight, Jean Mackin, WMUR News.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. New Hampshire contact tracing shows community spread of COVID-19 continuing. House officials say Granite Staters might be letting guard down. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Mike Cronin.
The fairs may be canceled, but Mainly Tub's huge annual fair sale is back and bigger than ever, with hundreds of hot tubs in stock and...
By the end of next month, each long-term care facility in New Hampshire will be in charge of its own COVID-19 testing program. Each facility will pair up with a commercial lab partner.
1 week of the month, they are going to have 100% of their staff tested, and every other week in that month, they're going to test 10% randomly of their staff.
New contact tracing data shows the majority of cases in public settings have been at long-term care facilities. Numbers remain low at other places like schools and restaurants. And tonight, that data shows of the state's 8,000 COVID-19 cases, 22,000 have been identified as close contacts of those people. And the main risk factor for contracting the virus is close contact with a confirmed case.
So we're concerned that people may be letting their guard down when they're out and about with friends and family or going to other types of social gatherings because they have been identified as close contacts in a number of our investigations.
Contact tracers found 25 to 30% of people with the virus have no identified risk factors, showing that community transmission is still a threat. Even as overall numbers are steady, the state says the number of close contacts to each case is going up and spiked around the 4th of July and Labor Day.
If you do choose to have those types of gatherings and someone does test positive who's attended that time period when they may have been infectious, they could end up being quarantined then.
Travel as a risk factor has increased as the restrictions have eased, but those numbers are not where they were at the start of the pandemic. But still, health officials are urging people to avoid crowds and public transportation where possible. Reporting live in Concord, Mike Cronin, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. New Hampshire farmers hit hard during increasing drought. Farmers struggle to keep animals fed. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Jessica Moran.
Huge annual fair sale is back and bigger than ever with hundreds of hot tubs in stock and on the...
The kernels aren't big. The ears are, that ear should be twice as big.
From corn to cattle. Windswept Maple Farms in Loudoun is doing everything it can to combat the drought conditions.
It's been a lot more work, a lot more management. Bringing in a lot of extra acres that we might cut for hay has now had to go on just to keeping these animals going through the summer.
Jeff Moore, an 8th-generation farmer, says the cows need to move more often now, and the crops are noticeably stunted.
Our later varieties of corn have been really taking a hit from the drought.
The United States Drought Monitor shows most of Strafford County and parts of Belknap, Merrimack, and Rockingham counties are in extreme drought conditions. The state's water director says everyone in New Hampshire is feeling the impacts.
We've got 1.3 million people now in drought level of some type across the state.
Some spots are 10 to 12 inches behind in precipitation, and more areas are expected to experience drought.
We expect the D3 area, based on the 14-day forecast, to continue to expand. We have no precipitation, substantial precipitation forecast in the next 2 weeks, and we do see D3 then expanding into central southern New Hampshire.
The director also says it will take several storms to catch up, but farmers say that won't make up for everything.
Aside from grass for growing feed for animals grazing, any rain right now isn't going to make up for all the missed harvest this summer.
The state's drought management team is meeting with different organizations on October 1st to talk more about the messaging that's needed during this drought. In Loudoun, Jessica Moran, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Reopening guidelines for ski industry proposed. Retailers push for greater capacity ahead of holidays. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Andy Hirschberger.
The fairs may be canceled, but Mainly Tub's huge annual fair sale is back and bigger than ever with...
The Governor's Economic Reopening Task Force heard a presentation today from New Hampshire's ski industry. Under their proposal, guests will see several changes. Pre-ordering tickets will be encouraged, lifts may be altered to allow for some space, and masks are a must.
Once they arrive in the parking lot, the mask goes on. The only time the mask comes off is when they're eating or drinking or descending the hill.
But the biggest changes may be at the base lodges. Ski industry representatives say while there is some room for flexibility, dumping your gear and heading to the mountain is highly discouraged.
Your car is really going to be your locker room now, but you won't be able to be in the lodge to leave a lot of bags inside the lodge. Your car will be your locker room, and it may also be your car is where you're going to be able to eat your lunch.
The New Hampshire Retail Association also had a proposal for the task force. They want retail businesses to increase occupancy from 50 to 100% if the owner chooses to do so. Officials hope this will help Christmas buying and maybe salvage their year.
I think we need to do everything that we can to support our local retailers, the ones that have invested in our community, the ones that have storefronts in our community and pay taxes.
The task force unanimously approved both of these guidelines today. Those guidelines now move on to the governor and to public health officials for final approval. Reporting live, Mandy Hirschberger, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Donald Trump Jr. campaigns in New Hampshire for father. President's son says New Hampshire is important to campaign. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9, Kristen Carosa.
The fairs may be canceled, but Mainly Tuck's huge annual fair sale is back and bigger than ever, with hundreds of
dozens of Trump supporters packed into a parking lot in North Conway to hear Donald Trump Jr. speak, while a group of supporters for Democratic nominee Joe Biden were close by.
It's great to be able to see this kind of energy, for my father, for my family, even for me. I just have a great time with it, and that's why we did this to begin with.
In a one-on-one interview with WMUR, Trump Jr. says campaign events like this one are important to fire up their supporters as the election inches closer. He says visiting New Hampshire is important to their campaign, but says it doesn't appear to be for Biden and running mate Kamala Harris.
He doesn't feel he needs to campaign because the media is doing his bidding for him, and frankly, when you put him in front of a crowd, it usually doesn't work out all that well. I imagine he's doing debate prep so that for those 2 hours of the debate, he can do a decent job. He should. He's been doing this for half a century.
Trump Jr. also addressed the president's recent refusal to commit to a peaceful transition of power if Joe Biden were to win in November.
I don't think he said that. I think he just wants to see a fair and balanced election. He doesn't want to see what the Democrats are pushing, where if you have absentee ballots, the signature does not have to match the signature on file of the voter. If you're not trying to steal an election, if you're not trying to cheat, what is the purpose of pushing for that? For those people in a place like this where there's a lot of independents who are on the fence, Joe Biden's been in Washington, D.C. for 50 years. Name an accomplishment. Name an accomplishment. Because if you can't, that's sort of a problem. You think he's going to start now? I don't think so.
Donald Trump Jr. says he will continue to campaign for the president over the next 40 days. Reporting in North Conway, Kristen Carosa, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that does it for this morning edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you back here later on today with more news. And I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit. Goodbye, everyone.